I still think about that room more than I want to.
Believe them, believe them.
Alright, so I've pulled up some of the most unsettling paranormal stories from TikTok. Shadow figures, things caught on camera, and people who straight up left their home the next day. Lights off, headphones in, and let's get into it.
What would you do if you were cleaning a large house alone and the owners tell you that there's one room that you don't need to clean, and every time you pass this room, you see something? This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about a woman who was a housekeeper, and she says that the worst thing about that room was not the room itself, but what kept appearing in the doorway whenever she would pass by. I used to clean houses for a living, and most of the time it was just normal rich people messes. Expensive kitchens, too many bathrooms, dog hair everywhere, nothing worth telling stories about. This happened in one house I worked in for maybe 5 months, and it is the only place I ever quit without notice. The house belonged to a couple in their 50s. Very formal, very private. They had a big old place, not a mansion exactly, but enough that it took me most of the day to do it properly. They had one rule from the start. I did not need to clean the mother's room. The husband's mother lived there too, upstairs in the back bedroom. He told me she was bedridden and had a private nurse some days, and on the days I cleaned, I could skip that room entirely. He said his mother did not like strangers and the family preferred to handle that part themselves. Fine by me. That kind of thing wasn't unusual. The first time I noticed something strange was maybe my second week there. I was vacuuming the upstairs hall, and as I passed her room, I saw her standing in the doorway. That by itself made me jump because I had been told she was bedridden. She was an older woman, very thin, white hair hanging flat, in a long pale nightgown. She was just standing there, looking at me. I smiled automatically and said, "Good morning." She didn't answer. Then the homeowner's husband came up the stairs behind me carrying towels, and I turned to say something to him, just something along the lines of, that his mom was up. But when I looked back, the doorway was empty. He went right past the room and didn't seem to notice anything. I asked casually if his mother was feeling better, and he stopped and looked at me oddly and said, "She hasn't gotten out of bed in months." I laughed because I thought maybe he was joking. He wasn't. After that, I tried not to look directly at the room when I went by, but it got harder because things kept happening around that doorway. Some days the door would be almost shut even though I passed it open earlier. Other days I would hear someone talking inside, but never a full conversation. More like one low voice and then long pauses. I told myself maybe the nurse was there. Then one Wednesday I heard the same low voice from the room, walked by a minute later, and the whole upstairs was empty except for me. The thing that started really to get to me was the smell. Not every time, but just sometimes. I'd be cleaning the hall bathroom or dusting the table at the top of the stairs, and all at once the air outside the bedroom would smell foul. Not like sickness exactly, more like old water and something spoiled underneath it. The smell would be there for maybe 30 seconds and then just gone. One afternoon I was changing sheets in the guest room across the hall and heard the mother laughing. Not loud, just a little laugh. It sounded wrong for some reason. Not because old women can't laugh, just because it sounded private, like she was responding to something said right beside her. I looked out into the hall and could see part of her doorway from where I stood. There was a shadow moving on the wall inside that room. Not from the hall light, not from me. It was moving across the far wall in a way that looked like somebody pacing inside, but too close to the bed to make sense. I left that floor and did the downstairs kitchen until I felt calm enough to go back. The homeowners never acted like anything was odd. That was part of what made it worse. They were stiff people to begin with, and the mother was never mentioned much, just little updates like she had a hard night or the nurse came early. I started wondering if maybe everybody in that house had just learned not to talk about whatever was happening. Then one day I saw her again. This time she wasn't in the doorway. She was in the bed, where she was supposed to be. The door was open wider than usual because the nurse had apparently been there earlier. I wasn't looking in on purpose. I just glanced while carrying a basket past. She was propped up on pillows, very still, staring at the ceiling. What scared me was not her. It was the corner behind the bed. There was someone else standing there, and I know what I saw. Not clearly enough to tell you a face, but there was a figure in that corner, taller than the bed, too dark against the wallpaper, and I stopped walking without meaning to and looked straight into the room. The old woman's eyes shifted. Very slowly, without turning her head, she looked right at me. And from the corner, something whispered, "Don't." I dropped the basket, and by the time I bent to grab it, the homeowner's wife was at the stairs asking if everything was all right. I said yes, because I didn't know what else to say. She looked at me for a second, and then at my mother-in-law's room, then back at me. She didn't ask anything else. And after that, I started rushing the upstairs cleaning as fast as I could. I wanted to be in and out before lunch. I didn't wear headphones anymore, and I didn't hum to myself. I wanted to hear everything and stay alert. The scariest day was the last one. I was polishing the upstairs hallway table when I heard the old woman speaking clearly for the first time, not muttering or laughing or speaking this time. She said, "No, not her." I froze, and then another voice answered. Not loud, but it was louder than hers. I could not make out the exact words, but I heard enough to know it was not her voice, and it was not coming from the hallway. It was inside the room with her. I started backing towards the stairs, and that's when the bedroom door opened a little wider on its own. I know people say that and it sounds fake. I don't care. It did open wider. And I could see the mother sitting up in bed now, a lot straighter than I had ever seen her, and even though I had been told more than once she could barely move by herself, she was looking towards the foot of the bed, not at me. And at the foot of the bed there was something crouched on the floor. I only saw a part of it, one arm, or maybe one shoulder, the shape of a head bent too low. It looked like it was kneeling there with its back to the door. Then the mother looked at me and smiled. Not a sweet old lady smile, not a confused smile. It was the kind of smile people make when they know something you don't. And without taking her eyes off me, she said, "You keep walking by when it's hungry." I left my supplies there and I went downstairs. The wife met me in the foyer, and before I even said anything, she held out my cash for the day. That scared me too, honestly, because it felt like she already knew I was done. I took the money, got in the car, and never came back. I ignored her call the next week, and when she texted asking if I was still planning to clean on Thursday, I blocked her number. I still think about that room more than I want to.
Nah, the second she said, "You keep walking by when it's hungry," I would have been out. Like, I'm not even grabbing my supplies, I'm just leaving. And the wife already had the cash ready before she even said a word. That means she knew. They all knew, the whole family knew what was in that room and didn't want to say it. And they're just letting this woman come clean the house every week like nothing's going on. And okay, it started with the old lady just standing in the doorway. That's already weird, because they told her that she can't get out of bed. But then you've got the voices, that thing crawling under the bed, and the shadows moving. And the problem is she kept getting back. And I get it, it's the paycheck, you need the work. But like, come on. The moment I see something crawling up under the bed and this old lady smiling at me like she knows something, I'm done. No job is worth that.
This girl sent me a story saying that something was pretending to be her father after he passed away. Now, I can't say the name of what this is called, but you guys can put two and two together. Dahlia is 19 now, and her father passed away when she was 15 years old, and they were extremely close. They were like best friends. He went to the hospital for stomach pains, and he ended up passing of a heart attack. And what was terrible is that he wasn't hooked up to a heart monitor, so when he passed away, the doctors and nurses did not know that he passed away until the next morning. Well, the same night that her father passed away, she was at home in her bed, and she wanted to call him because she missed him. This was before she knew that he had passed away. Well, as soon as this happens, the presence in her room just shifts, and she feels something next to her bed, right next to her bed where her father used to read her stories when she was little. She suddenly hears something say, It's going to be okay. Well, a few days after he passes away, a bunch of weird stuff starts happening. Her mom and her start finding things in places that they weren't before. His phone was shut off, but sometimes it would just randomly turn on and play his favorite song. They suddenly started seeing heart-shaped things everywhere. Heart-shaped crumbs, heart-shaped spills, heart-shaped patterns. Things kept happening like this for a while, and she started to enjoy it because she started to feel like he was kind of telling her that he loved her. Like, this was his way of telling her, like, I love you, I'm okay. Nothing crazy happens until 3 years later when she was living at her grandmother's house. Her and her grandmother are both religious. They're Christians. They both believe in ghosts. Her whole entire family does. In fact, her whole entire family has seen past loved ones before. So they know about this stuff. They're very intuitive. And she said that weird things would especially happen in that house. So one night she's at her grandmother's house and she's on the phone with somebody that she has a crush on, right? And she has a TV playing in her background. When randomly at 11:03 p.m., the TV just shuts off and the call that she's on just disconnects, hangs up. Suddenly, the lights go off in her room and a battery operated lamp that she had just shuts off. And right when the lamp shuts off, she starts hearing these loud church bells. And I'm talking like they're so loud she's having to cover her ears, and they don't live near a church. The noise flooded the house and it only lasted for about 3 seconds, and then after that it just stopped. She's just sitting there in like shock when she sees something out of the corner of her eye, and she looks over at her bedroom door and there's a very tall shadow man standing in her bedroom door. It had no face, but even though it had no face, she knew it was looking directly at her. She only saw it for a split second, then she blinks and then it's just gone. The reason she mentioned the time earlier being 11:03 is because on 11:03 is November 3rd, and that is the day that her father passed. Now she's pretty freaked out about this, so she calls the guy back that she was talking to and she's like, hey, listen, did you hear anything? And he's like, no, the call just failed. At this point she's freaking out because she's like, what was that? Why did everything shut off? Am I imagining that? Did I imagine that shadow man? So she goes downstairs to check on her grandmother, and her grandmother is watching TV, and her grandmother seems visibly freaked out. So she asks her grandmother what's wrong, and her grandmother's like, didn't you hear those church bells? Now this kind of stunned her because she didn't think that she had heard them too. So her grandmother was like, was it from the TV upstairs? And Dahlia is like, no, my TV shut off. And her grandmother's face just goes pale. So she goes, yeah, mine did too. That's what her grandmother said. And then she was like, did you see the shadow man? And her grandmother's like, no, I've never seen a shadow man in my house before. So she figures at this point that she just imagined it, but she goes to sleep with literal bells ringing in her head. A few months later, she's still living in that house and the same thing happens again. The TV shuts off, the lights shut off, and then the bells go off again. Now she's pretty annoyed at this point because she had a test in the morning for school and she needed as much sleep as possible. So she starts to go downstairs to see if her grandmother had heard anything when she stops because in the spare bedroom, she sees something. She just froze. She did not know what to do. She felt like she couldn't even move, even though she was standing there wide awake. But here's where it gets scary. She could see him a little better now. She could vaguely see the man, but this time she could see his face, and it looked like her father. But she knew it wasn't her father. It was something trying to look like her father. She said at this point he doesn't see her, and he starts slowly walking around the room. He's looking at pictures. He's looking at things in the room. He's like analyzing things. Almost like if he was trying to remember the room. And then as soon as he sees that she's looking at him, he just stops. At this point, she feels like the air in her lungs had left her. She could not breathe. But then something super creepy happens. She can tell that he's whispering underneath his breath, but she can't tell what he's saying, almost like he's speaking in a different language. Once she could finally move again, she damn near collapsed, trying to catch her breath. And then she looked up and he was just gone. Now, she doesn't know if this had anything to do with her dad or not. She doesn't think this was her father. She doesn't think that her father would do something like this to her. So she runs downstairs to tell her grandmother, and her grandmother's like, yes, I heard the bells too. And she's like, did you see the man? And she's like, no, I have never seen a man in this house, especially not one that looked like your father. So she makes her say a strong prayer with her to banish the unclean spirits that were in her home. They wanted those spirits to know that they were not welcome, and she never saw that shadow man again. Here's the kicker. She asked her grandmother what she thinks that this could be, and surprise, surprise, when her mother was younger, she used a Ouija board in that exact bedroom, and her grandmother did not know until years later. Here's the even crazier part. Her mother used to have sleep paralysis all the time, and guess what she would see? A man that looked like her father who had passed. She said, so what is this? Because whatever this is, what is it? Taking the shape of past loved ones of my family? But all she knows is that that wasn't her dad. What do you guys think this is? I think I know what it is, and I think you know what it is. I just can't say the word. I just found out that I just can't say that word. So happy about that. But we all know what this is, right? And I think that it definitely stemmed from the Ouija board 100%. I do not think that was your father. I don't think it had anything to do with your father. In fact, I think that it took the pain that you were feeling from the loss of your father and it was using that to try and scare you. It was doing the same thing that it did to your mom, maybe because you are your mom's daughter. That is my thoughts on it.
Okay, so this one actually got to me. Because at first it's kind of sweet, right? Like the phone playing his favorite musics, and like the heart-shaped things showing up everywhere. Like, that's comforting. If that was my dad, I'd want to believe he was still around too. But then it shifts, and you can feel when it shifts. The TV cutting out, the lights going off, and like the church bells so loud she has to cover her ears. Even though she doesn't live near a church, that's not your dad. That's not anyone's dad. And then she sees him. And this is the part that really got to me, because she said it looked like her father, but she knew something wasn't like him. Like if some entity was wearing her father's face. And it's just walking around the room, looking at family pictures of him, almost like it's studying how to be him. And then it notices her looking and just stops, and starts whispering in some weird language that she can't understand. Like, come on. And the fact that her mom went through the exact same thing, seeing a man that looked like her dad in sleep paralysis, in the same house, and then you find out the mom used the Ouija board to communicate with him in the exact same room. Yeah, I mean, we all know what this is. This is not her father.
Never actually told this story publicly because every time that I try, I start to hear myself and I start to realize how absolutely fucking ridiculous it sounds. I put my big girl pants on today. Actually, my husband's big ass pants, but regardless, we're wearing big pants and we're feeling brave. So we're gonna tell the story. So I live near the Appalachian Mountains and I grew up even closer to the Appalachian Mountains than I do now. If you know anything about Appalachian grandparents, you know that they tell stories. And some of those stories might sound to others like they are just trying to keep their children safe or like their grandchildren safe from the like animals or things in the woods or anything like that, or just strangers in general. I mean, I suppose you could also explain it away as like Appalachian folklore. If you actually grew up in it, you kind of get a different view of things. One of those stories really stood out to me and my cousin at the time. So my grandma would tell me and my cousin all of these freaking crazy stories about the things that were in the woods beyond the trees behind her property. Well, not behind her property, but I mean like, you know, the wooded area of her property. It's important to note that my grandparents' house was basically my cousin and I's house. Like, my parents worked all the time, so I was always there, and her parents actually lived with my grandma upstairs in the, top of her house. Honestly, you'd think that we would know the woods like the back of our hand, but our grandmother would not allow us to go anywhere near those woods. She said nobody was allowed to go near them because it was just dangerous. And at the time, we had no idea why it was dangerous, and every time we would ask, she would just say, sometimes there are places where people just don't belong. And you know, as a kid, that freaked us out a lot. We were like, okay, we'll just believe you. When we got into our teenage years, it only fueled the curiosity. And so one day, we decided to go out in the woods and see why it was so dangerous. So one day, I remember we waited until my grandma was asleep. Not like asleep, but she used to take day naps a lot. We would wait until she fell asleep on one of her little day naps. And we snuck out of the house, basically, to go exploring. We ended up getting to this place pretty deep in the woods, actually. Like, we had been walking for a very long time before we had reached this little like dilapidated handmade sign that said White Bone Ridge. And immediately upon going past this sign, we realized why it was called that, because every single stone there was like this oddly like light color, and it looked like bones. Those rocks looked like freaking bones. But beyond that point was like even denser, even thicker forest than we had already walked through to get to that point we were already at. I swear to you, once we got to the edge of that tree line, that's when things started to shift. My intuition was telling me to leave. My pride was telling me to press on. You can just guess which side won. Whatever, we go in and we just start exploring more. We keep going, marking our way so that we are not to get lost. And then we end up coming across a cave, which I know what you're thinking. Why would you go inside of a cave that you just randomly find? I know, and I wouldn't do it to this day. But we went inside the cave, okay? And this cave was fucking cold, bro. And I don't mean like just a little chill. I mean, bro, that was ice cold. The entrance itself wasn't especially like large or anything like that, but it was like enough of a size to get through, and it looked like things had gotten through. Which, looking back now, like that could have definitely been an animal, and we definitely could have been slaughtered. But honestly, what we found inside was way worse than an animal. I honestly wish it was a fucking bear. We go into this cave, and the deeper we go into the cave, the more we start to see like the walls of it starting to smooth out more and more and more. And it doesn't really look like it's very natural. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen like what it looks like when fingers or hands have like smoothed out a surface over time. It kind of looked like that, like something had been walking in or like squeezing itself in, and it like, you know, rubbed against the material to make it smooth like that. It's a very distinct look. If you know, you know. If you don't know, you don't really know. But honestly, the first moment that I started to feel genuine fear rather than like the little flickers of fear that I was, or like more like adrenaline that I was feeling of like, oh my god, we're in this fucking cave. Oh my gosh, there's something wrong. No, bro, the first fear strike that I actually really felt was when I started to notice like these like cave markings, and some of them had like dust still in them, as if something had recently made those markings. But stupidly, we continued to go because my cousin convinced me that it was probably just a fucking animal, which I don't know why that would convince me, like I said, because what if it was a fucking bear or like a mountain lion or something? Like, what the hell? I'm thinking, okay, I'm not gonna wimp out right now. Like, we're already here. We might as well see what the danger really is, right? So we keep going, and as we're going, it's like this like really narrow, like I would say like a hallway type thing, but it's really narrow. And it ends up opening into this big cavern, which honestly, it was giving The Descent. You know what I mean? Have you ever seen that movie? So we get into this cavern and we're shining our flashlights around, and this thing is so big that honestly, like, our flashlights are not reaching every corner. As soon as we get in there, we start to hear footsteps off in the darkness in front of us. So we froze, and when we did that, the footsteps also froze. Stayed silent for a good like 2 minutes, I swear to God, and we heard no other noise, so we were probably like, okay, we're just freaking ourselves out. It's our footsteps, you know, like whatever. So we continue to go, we keep walking, but this time we're more weary. We're not like, you know, haphazardly walking around anymore. We are like in a huddle, like with our flashlights in front, like, okay, we're gonna keep going now. But that decision to go forward would change our perception of these forests forever and make us believe in all the folklore, seriously. All those crazy stories that Grammy used to tell, yeah, they're gonna seem way less crazy after that. Then we started to hear shuffling, and it was fucking loud. Like, it was like right off in the dark sections that our flashlights were not reaching. So it was like a case of fight or flight, and we chose to freeze. We're frozen in the middle of this big giant open fucking cavern, and we're flashing our flashlights around, and we start to notice that like the materials on the walls are moving. Like, what we thought were just like stones or like, you know, some kind of something, because they were standing so still before, we didn't realize that it was an actual being. As we're shining our flashlights around the sides of the cavern, we start to pay more attention than we had before. And we start to see faces within what we thought were just pale white rocks, because like I was telling you, this space that we found, those rocks and like the stones and stuff were like white as bones. Can I say like one more fucking time? Comment down below how many times I said like in this video. Jesus Christ. Dude, these things were stark white. And by this point, they were all staring at us. And by all, I mean, there was a lot. Way more than we were expecting. Way more than we even thought. We weren't expecting to see that. I mean, way more than I was initially expecting after I had seen, like, the faces. Bodies were super fucking thin, and their arms were way too long for their bodies. Like, honestly, it was giving the creature from Backrooms, but with a big pale white face with these ginormous saucer eyes. I swear to God, these eyes were so big they looked like black moons on these things' faces. We're still standing there with our flashlights shining on these things, and all of a sudden one of them moves forward, like slightly more into the light. That's when our fight or flight really kicked in. We got out of freeze mode and we got the fuck out of there. Honestly, I don't even remember the run back, to be honest with you. I just remember my lungs were burning, my body was on fire, my ribs felt like they were cracking out of my fucking chest by the time we reached the edge of the woods. I don't think anything was following us out of the cave, but I think like adrenaline just really made me feel like there was, but I don't think that anything followed us. But yeah, if you live in Appalachia and your grandparents have ever told you the story of the moon-eyed people of the mountains, believe them, and stay out of random caves.
Her grandmother wasn't just saying stay out of the woods because of the bears or whatever. She specifically said people don't belong there. And that's a very different thing to say. And then they go in anyway, find this weird cave with wall smoothed out, like something's been squeezing through for years, markings on the wall with fresh dust still inside them. And they end up in this massive cavern where their flashlights can't reach the wall. And then they realize the pale white things that they thought were rocks were not actually rocks. They're alive, all of them, staring at them, thin bodies, arm way too long, and huge black eyes. And there's a lot of them. And one step forward into the light, and that's when they ran. But the part that really gets me is she said her grandmother has a name for them. The Mooney people of the mountains. You don't name something like that to scare your grandkids. You name it because you saw them before.
Hi there, my name is Haley, and I would like to start this story off by saying that I am a firm believer in Jesus Christ and that He is my Savior. Having said that, this story is 100% true, hand on the Bible. A couple of years ago, my girlfriend, now wife Ashley, and I stupidly bought a timeshare. We were young and dumb with a little bit of expendable money and thought, why not? Our timeshare was located in Chicago, but we were tired of visiting there. So we looked and saw that there were some cabins in Tennessee. The pictures of the cabin were beautiful, and the thing that sold me was it's very modern looking and fancier than our house. We live in Michigan, and when we drove down, it was about a 10-hour drive. We were exhausted and arrived at the cabin around dinner time. It was essentially a neighborhood that circled all the way around and up a mountain with a bunch of other cabins. When we pulled in, we sat there just excited to finally be there, not excited to lug all of our stuff in. We both grabbed a couple of bags and made our way inside. I am not clairvoyant or psychic, but as soon as that front door opened and I took one step inside, it felt heavy. It felt very heavy and strange, and I had this overwhelming feeling of dread. I didn't mention this to Ashley as she had a huge smile on her face and didn't seem to feel what I did. I tried to shrug it off and kept it to myself and succeeded for a little while. We were scheduled to be there a total of a week, so I just knew this was going to be the longest week of my life. The first night was spooky. Nothing in particular happened, but I did feel eyes on me and just a very heavy presence. Every time I woke up in the night, there was never an adjustment period of dreaming to reality. It hit me the second I opened my eyes that something was off. The next day, I got ready as fast as I could so we could leave and explore Tennessee. I tried my damnedest to stay out as late as we possibly could without alerting Ashley that something was wrong. After all, nothing had happened, so I couldn't really explain it. The bedroom was located upstairs in the loft area, so that's where we spent most of our time if we were there. The bathroom and kitchen were downstairs. Anytime I needed to go into another room by myself, the feeling got more intense every single time I did. Like, not only were there eyes on me, but they were also only about a foot behind me. Something deep in my gut was telling me not to look into a mirror or anything reflective, so I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't, because I know deep in my heart that I would have seen something that I would never forget. To this day, I don't look in the mirror for too long. There was also this coat closet that was located right in front of the main door, so as soon as you opened the front door, that was the first thing you saw. I just knew that something was not right about it. It's not something that I can explain to have you fully understand, but I felt that there was something in it. So every time I needed to go by it, I ran. I did everything I could not to look at it or give it really any time of day. At this point, I was following Ashley around the cabin and wouldn't go into a room by myself. Ashley knew something was up with me, and I decided to tell her, but not everything. Just that I felt uncomfortable. She said that she was feeling a little strange too, but never really give it any thought. There was this one instance when I went into the restroom downstairs, and obviously kept the door open. I kept looking straight at the wall in front of me because I didn't know how, but I knew there was something above me. I could literally pinpoint exactly where this thing was. It was above me in the corner, watching me. I did my business and couldn't help but run out of there and get back to Ashley. Eventually, the closet was on my mind constantly, so I decided that if I just opened it and saw that nothing was there, it would ease my anxiety and maybe allow me to enjoy the rest of the trip. I prayed for courage and protection and decided to, very stupidly I know, just go open it. I walked downstairs and stared at it for what felt like hours. I finally gained the courage to open it and saw nothing but a couple of hangers and a vacuum. but also felt like I was intruding. Like now I had cornered those eyes that were following me. I couldn't see anything or anyone, but I felt it. I felt exactly where they were standing and felt like I had locked eyes with them. I felt like by opening the door, I opened something more. Like I gave permission for something without saying anything. I closed the door and prayed again. Later that night, Ashley decided to go to bed, and I just felt the ultimate dread. I didn't want to. I didn't want to turn off the lights or get under the covers, and I didn't want to lay down. I really didn't want it to be night. But I did, though. I turned on Family Guy and just tried to focus on that. Somehow, even with eyes on me, I fell asleep. I had a dream that I will remember for the rest of my life, and if you're interested in that, let me know, and I can share it with you. That dream belongs in hell, and it can stay there. Family Guy had been turned off, and I was in complete darkness and silence. I woke up not being able to move. It was not sleep paralysis, it was just plain shock and fear. And those eyes never left me. I know Ashley would never turn it off because Family Guy is like a comfort blanket for me. For the rest of the night, I laid there, stiff and quiet, until eventually the sun came up. I mentioned none of this to Ashley, only that I had a rough night and a bad dream. We left for the day, and when we came back, we decided we were going to use the jacuzzi that was upstairs near our bed. We hadn't used it yet, and our trip was soon coming to an end. There was a hot tub outside on the porch, but it is important to note that the porch was literally on the edge of a cliff. Not a huge cliff, but still. And the entire porch was wrapped in this chicken wire fencing material, presumably so people didn't fall. So there was absolutely no way onto the back porch without walking through the front door to get to the back door. We got into the jacuzzi that was inside, and finally, I couldn't take it anymore and decided to tell her everything. From the eyes to the closet. That's when she looked at me with the most serious look and said, "Maybe we shouldn't talk about this here." And before I could react or say anything, we heard the doorknob on the back door that leads to the fenced-in porch jiggle. We looked at each other in complete silence, eyes wide, but did not dare to move. The jiggling got louder and louder and louder until finally it stopped. Only a few seconds later, there was a loud bang on the back door, like someone or something wanted in now. Our fight or flight kicked in simultaneously, and we were out of that jacuzzi and dressed only a few moments later. We looked at each other and said, "F this," and we packed our stuff, not caring what we left behind. At midnight, we packed all of our stuff into our car and headed back home to Michigan. In the car, we finally unloaded what we endured that week, and Ashley revealed that she was also having nightmares, but didn't want to frighten me. She didn't quite feel everything I did, but agreed that something was off. 9 to 10 hours later, we returned home and didn't even bother to bring in the bags. We went straight to our bedroom and went to sleep. As I was about to fall asleep, I heard footsteps pacing around the perimeter of our bed, just back and forth. My head was under the covers and I didn't dare look, so I stayed there until I fell asleep. When we both woke up later that day, I asked her if she heard the footsteps too, and her face went white as a ghost, and she said, "I was hoping I had dreamt that." Ever since then, we have had some very strange occurrences in our house, and I'd love to share them with you if you're interested. So I did reach out to Haley, and they ended up sending me the rest of their story. I do want to say that the dream that they had inside the cabin is a little bit too graphic for TikTok, so I won't be able to share that here, but I am going to share with you what they've been experiencing since they got home from that cabin. Just last night, my dresser tipped over in the middle of the night. Not the first time that this has happened. Lights go on and off, and things go missing. We hear walking on whatever floor we are not on. Things also crash on the floor in rooms we are not in. Like big booms of things falling, and when we go check, nothing is out of place. One night, we fell asleep to Family Guy on Hulu, but we woke up to a scary clown movie on Netflix. But it was frozen to a still image of a clown. At the time, we had just moved our bedroom upstairs, so we only had a laptop on a nightstand for the TV. There's no way we could have rolled onto the remote and changed the platform and put on a movie. Another night we slept up there, there is a room right on the other side of where we were sleeping with a recliner chair in it. It sounded like someone was rocking in it. It kept hitting the wall. When we went in, not only was it empty, but it wasn't even close enough to hit the wall if someone were rocking in it. All of our animals will randomly stare in a random corner of our house for way too long. Ashley is heard whispering in her ear at night as she's about to go to sleep. A couple of weeks ago, we heard our basement door handle rattle, and when we walked towards it, we heard running down the steps. When you first go into any room, it feels like you are being watched.
Okay, so the door thing by itself, I mean, you can explain that when shifting directions, draft hits different, whatever, but the motion detector that only detects human-like motion going off at the same time, and it only picks up human-sized movements, that's where it stops being a coincidence for me. Because one weird thing is just a weird thing. But like, two weird things at the same time, happening in the same house and in the same room, I'm sorry, that's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. And she said it herself. If it was just the door, she wouldn't have made the video. But like, it's the combination that gets you. And then the Myrtle's Plantation photos. That place has centuries of history, and people keep catching the same kind of stuff on camera. Shadow figures in room that were empty, figures in off-limit room that cannot be accessed. And the scary part is, these people are not looking to see it. You know, they're just scrolling through their vacation photos to bring up good old memories. And days later, after the vacation, they see it. That's always how it happens. Nobody sees it in the moment. You only catch it after.
I'm like 80% sure I had a paranormal experience last night, and I need your opinion. I know it's gonna sound like not that big of a deal in the beginning, just please hear me out until the end. Okay, so basically last night I was at my boyfriend's house and we were just in his room watching TV, and it was around like 10 p.m. He had a fan in the window of his room and it was blowing air into the room. So naturally that's gonna create a draft, and so sometimes it'll make the door close. It's happened multiple times, we always ignore it because we know it's just the fan. But that's not what happened last night. The fan was on like always, and all of a sudden, the door swung open, not closed. Okay, I'm gonna use my own door as an example. It was like this. So it wasn't fully closed, but it also wasn't cracked open at all. And then all we saw was it go like this. And it was a forceful push. It felt deliberate, so deliberate that I thought it was one of his dogs making its way into the room. But nobody was there, and we just kind of sat there for a minute straight, wondering what that was and what do we do now. I understand that the wind could have circulated differently somehow, and it just made the door swing inward instead of slamming shut. Like, I understand it can be explained away, and it makes sense. And if that was the only thing that had happened, I wouldn't even be making this video. But what freaks me out is what happened after, because a few minutes after, his mom texted him, which I'll insert the screenshot for you now. They have a camera with a motion detection light. And around the same time that we had that weird experience with the door, the light downstairs was going off because it was detecting some kind of motion. And that motion detector only picks up human movement. It doesn't pick up little animals because it's outside. So I don't know, you can call me crazy, you can say I'm overreacting, but like, that feels pretty paranormal to me. Maybe it's the horror content catching up to me, maybe I'm opening some doors. I don't know, but let me know what you think. Try and put yourself in my shoes as well. I'm all for explaining things away, I'm all for the logical explanations, but two things back to back like that in the same time frame, that's gonna do it for me. While I was doing my usual scroll through Reddit to find creepy photos to show you, I found a few that take place in Myrtle's Plantation, which is a historic estate located in Louisiana from before the Civil War, and it is very widely known for being haunted. So let's look at these pictures. I took a night tour at Myrtle's Plantation a couple years ago, and when looking back at the pictures, I spotted some interesting shadow-like figures behind me. It's possible that somebody could have just been walking behind me, but I remember being in the room with the chandeliers completely alone for a while the rest of the group was somewhere else. A few years ago, my friend visited Myrtle's Plantation with his family. While they were taking a tour of the house, he was taking photos of random rooms in passing. The room in this photo was actually not a part of the tour, and it was off limits. He's certain that nobody was inside when he snapped this. He didn't even notice anything until he was looking through his photos a few days later. To me, it looks like a shadow being or some kind of lingering energy. Given the history of the Myrtles, I find it interesting.
The thing about this one is nobody actually jumps out at her. You know, nothing grabs her, nothing speaks to her. She just knows for a fact that something is there. From the second she walks through that door, she knows something is wrong. And that's almost worse because you can't point to a moment when it all started. It was already there waiting, and the detail about not looking in mirrors because something in her gut told her not to when she listened. She said she knows if she had looked, she would have seen something she'd never forget. That line is honestly terrifying because she's not telling you what it was. She's telling you she refused to find out. And then she opens the closet, thinking if it's empty she'll feel better. But the opposite happens. She feels like she cornered whatever was watching her. Like she made eye contact with something she couldn't see. And after that, everything escalates. The doorknob jiggling, even though it's on a porch that you can literally not access from outside. The banging, and they leave at midnight. Drive 10 hours home. And the first night back, she hears footsteps pacing around their bed, and her wife's heard them too. The TV switching from Family Guy to some weird image of a clown, and the recliner rocking by itself, whispering in her wife's ear at night. Whatever was in that cabin left with them. So that's it for today. If you liked the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and maybe comment down below what story was your favorite. Click on this next video, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.